start off there. Okay, so we're ready to go, and we're doubled up in the front room. We have both Kelly and Amy helping us. So are we ready to go? You want to take a roll call?
Sure, yeah, I'll take roll call. So good morning, everyone. We'll start with roll call. So Board Member Audette. Here. Board Member Cry.
Present.
Board Member Gallagher.
Here.
Board Member Kellstrom.
Here.
Board Member Plummer.
Here.
And Board Member Resner.
Present.
And Chair Watkins.
Present. Okay, if everybody rise, we will have Mike Gallagher lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Turn off my phone, Chair.
Yeah.
I'm doing it.
Okay, everybody else turn off the phones.
Yeah. So salute and pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, sitting in for Sean is Keith. So Keith, would you like to do the staff introductions?
It would be my pleasure. So yes, I'm Keith Williams, Senior Transportation Planner here, filling in for Sean Tejan, the Director. I have a unique opportunity to serve as the mid-manager on rotation. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and thank you, Sean. And I'll just do some staff introductions. Joining us here is Moen Kalui, Associate Transportation Planner, Michael Cooker, Senior Transportation Planner, Jen Palm, also Senior Transportation Planner. You've already heard from Amy Lindsay, the Executive Assistant, and Kelly Irving, Accounting Clerk, and Jessica Carlson, our Chief Fiscal Officer, is attending remotely, so she's online. Laurent Beauregard is in the back helping with technology, so and he's our Assistant Transportation Planner. John Kinney, sitting to my left, is CERTA's legal counsel.
Okay, thank you very much, Keith. We have no workshops and no presentation, so moving right ahead, we are in the public comment period, but I think I'll start first there. Kelly, do we have anybody queued up online?
No, I do not see anyone.
Okay, is there anybody in the room that would like to make public comment? Seeing nobody, we will close the public comment period. Item number 7 is our consent calendar. Do any board members wish to pull any item for further discussion? Then we will consider them all as one motion. I just would point out that I always find that item 7 and 9 is emergent home program, and what's going on with that is an interesting program.
Yeah, the 3D housing.
Yes.
Can I ask a question about that? Is the one in Shasta Lake City, was that the veterans home or is that a different product?
That's, it's my understanding, it's the affordable housing, so Cascade Village.
Cascade Village, okay.
So it's not the.
It's not that, okay.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second. Okay, it's been moved by Kellstrom and seconded by Plummer. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. We are on item number 8, which is an executive director's report. Sean, you get to come back in and do something.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thanks for having me back. Good morning, Board of Directors. Happy to have you here this October. I hope you all have a safe and fun Halloween tomorrow this weekend. We've got nice weather, so that'll be fun to enjoy. And then my kids are having fun getting ready for that. So a few different items. It's been a busy summer for us here. So a few items related to legislative updates, budgets, and agency activities. In terms of state legislative items, there were no new Brown Act bills that were passed and approved this legislative cycle to benefit the ability for flexible remote participation by non-decision making committees, such as our SSTAC, Social Service Technical Advisory Committee, Those were all moved to two-year bills, so we are hopeful we might see something next legislative cycle next year in 2026. So we'll track that. And if there are, we'll come back to you for some support items related to those like last time. Senate Bill 71 did pass and it was signed by the governor. This extended California Environmental Quality or CEQA exemptions for various transit projects. One change from the original bill was originally it would have indefinitely extended those exemptions. It did not. The legislature stopped that at 2040. So why that far to go through and not just do it? A lot of people are frustrated, but so transit operational plans, signal timing projects, stop improvements, and even services related to modifications of microtransit or ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, paratransit services at least are now exempt under CEQA, and that's extended. So that'll be a benefit, keeps our system more efficient, less costly to do those reviews that are needed as the transit agencies need to modify services to meet community needs. As you also know, SB 840 was passed, which is the cap and invest extension. So cap and trade, as we formerly have known it until now, was extended. Some key provisions was that the newly renamed program was extended until year 2045. It did add some new reporting requirements for the Legislative Analyst Office to provide information to the state legislature. It did also require a CARB's chair to report at least 3 years annually to the state legislature on the progress and performance of that system. So at least the legislature put some additional accountability on CARB related to that program and show how it's helping or not. And allow the legislature to determine if they need to make some revisions in the future legislatively. It did also create some changes to the way that various programs were funded. They created now what are 3 tiers. They call them tiers 1, 2, and 3. And in that order is priority. So tier 1 includes funding for some state responsibility area fire prevention fees to help with fire prevention. Also, they created a new legislative council to advise the state legislature on and to provide advice and investigation services on climate-related matters in the areas of energy, environmental quality and safety, natural resources, and water. So we're still waiting to see what that will look like and how long that will take before that's established. Tier 2, there were 2 categories of funding here. They included high-speed rail, $1 billion annually. And additionally, there was $1 billion annually included for legislative actions. That was a change with the last 2 elements of the cap and trade program, which capped revenues at 10% that were up to the legislature to decide as long as they stayed within the guidelines of the program. That now has been changed to $1 billion. We have heard so far that the state legislature, as part of this last budget cycle, did include funding for transit passes, but not much more has been mentioned so far. So we think that will come in future trailer budget bills. And then tier 3, this is the area of category projects that we keep an eye on that this region has benefited from immensely. There will be funding $800 million annually for the Affordable Housing System and Communities Program. As you may recall, those are 2 different developments in downtown Reading that have been funded with that, as well as in the city of Shasta, Cascade Village. So I'm sure our local agencies will look at that program for opportunities to improve and provide housing in the region as needed. The Transit Intercity Rail Capital Program continues with $400 million annually. The Low Carbon Transit Operations Program, which is a formula distribution that we received, that stayed at $200 million annually. And then one change was the Department of Forestry has $200 million annually for fire prevention. Some federal updates for you. I know I've had a couple questions about, hey, we've got a current federal shutdown. We know what it's doing to the county. We know how it's impacting our communities and what it's going there is not working. How does it impact us? Well, right now it does not. The federal shutdown from a transportation perspective, and the way that transportation funds are appropriated are not impacted significantly on the surface side. You've heard of the impacts to airports and the FAA employees. But when we talk about Federal Highway Administration, Federal Transit Administration support for our roads or bridges, our transit services, those are not because the multi-year federal transportation bill already appropriates certain amounts every year. So the only thing that would be subject to any change would be any additional amounts at the state level or the federal Congress decision making. But we will continue to track that. I would say the biggest impact we've had have been the staffing reductions. For example, Federal Highway Administration's California region recently has gone from 60 employees to 30. And that's up a couple of divisions without staff in there, so it has delayed projects for Caltrans, regional agencies, your cities and county staff. Also during the summer, North State RTPA directors, including myself, participate in discussions with staff from Congressman LaMalfa and Kylie's office related to the next multi-year federal transportation bill and how it could benefit our rural counties. Additionally, as included and seen in the correspondence section of your packet, staff submitted a letter in September to the U.S. Department of Transportation Secretary Duffy, echoing some of those conversation items that we've had with Congressman LaMalfa and Kylie staff. We are hearing where we're at with federal funding. Current federal funding is through September of 2026. Both in the House and Senate, we are hearing that the Transportation Committee chairs are asking for draft language to come out by the end of December of this year. So we're actively watching that to see what that will look like. Some rumors to date that we've heard so far in some of the discussion, even though there's no draft language out yet to review, is that one area is safety, safety, safety. We've seen this with Secretary Duffy in a number of elements asking for what are we doing to increase safety? What are we doing to increase and improve safety on our corridors that are not on the highway system? They've asked for updates from all states on the process. And those are currently being submitted. Of what projects are in the pipeline? What are those needs? Also, we see freight is probably going to be a huge emphasis in the next federal transportation bill. So we're actively watching that. That ties in line with another item you hear today about a freight corridor plan. We're also hearing support for consolidating programs. With the last federal transportation bill, a lot of programs became competitive. So your staff, SRTA staff, Caltrans staff have had to do a lot of grant applications, put information together, rather than receive those formulaically to have some guidelines about what those project funds are supposed to fund, and then just go through that process and show how those funds will be used for projects in the region to meet our community needs. So we're hopeful that we will see that consolidation and more formulaic funding. One area that we're hearing some support for and call for is the
Can I interrupt you and ask why one of those is better than the other?
so formulaic funding is allows to trickle down much faster, and
Okay.
we're removing the middleman process of having to go through a bunch of review with the federal agencies
That makes sense.
and or the oversight even by Caltrans. In California, we have a unique situation where the Federal Highway Administration and Federal Transit Administration have a memorandum of agreement that says there's all these federal administrative responsibilities, and we pass that down to Caltrans to do instead. And so Caltrans goes through the process at the headquarters level. I would say what it will also help do, I think, is allow us maybe a little bit more flexibility. Some funding programs, headquarters has unfortunately taken the opinion of being more restricted in the use of funds, which is so well both from road, bridge, and even transit perspective. So formulaically, if we can at least get it to the regional level.
Means it has a sense of more.
Right.
That makes sense.
In some program funds may go one, and some funds may come straight to your cities and counties. So you'll be able to just do it, we just provide a little bit of reporting. One area that we're hearing also is the Surface Transportation Block Group Program. We call STBGP, because we are below 250,000 population, we swap those funds for state funds. We're hearing calls for increasing that, which currently that program is about 20% of federal funds that is nationally. We're hearing calls to increase that to 30 to 35%.
What's the acronym stand for?
So
So the
Surface
area
Transportation Block Group, so this is
Surface
what you use commonly for maintenance.
Got it.
So maintenance activities, bridge activities.
You
other
can't just throw
projects.
those acronyms out there and think they're
Right.
gonna keep track.
No.
That was a new one.
So the benefit though is that if we get a higher amount of the federal funds formulaically, that literally is going to come straight to your jurisdictions. So your staff can then allocate those funds for the needs that you have in your community on an annual basis. So that'll hopefully, fingers crossed, we can see that. A couple other just activities. Yours truly was asked to participate in a task force called the Sustainable Communities Task Force with the California State Transportation Agency. They oversee Caltrans Office of Traffic Safety, CHP. Part of the task force responsibility is to assist CalSTA in advising on how state activities could support sustainable communities in areas of transportation, housing, and land use. So CalSTA is kind of taking the lead, even though they're the transportation agency. They have participation from the Office of Land Use, also from the Office of Housing and Community Development. Air Resources Board also participates. Those are the three areas of focus. The role of the task force will be to advise and provide input on from our different perspectives on how those potential recommendations may work, how they may not, and how's the plan. Out of the 30 members that participate, 10 of them represent regional agencies. So 1/3 of representation regional agencies across the board from small to large. So we're encouraged by that the regional agencies will be able to share local challenges and issues across the state and be able to advise on that. We're told that CalSTA staff intend to have a final report to be able to inform essentially, it's almost like the next legislature and our governor in November 26 on what maybe some of those budgetary, regulatory, or legislative recommendations could be. And then also staff continues to participate with other member directors on SB 375 reform. We're meeting roughly about every 2 to 3 weeks, talk about what that strategy is, what types of things can we try to work on to get some reform, possibly get some legislative language next year. You know, leave it at that because it's part of our strategy, but know that it's at least encouraging. And then the last thing I have is staff participated in a workshop. I forwarded to all of you, Whiskey Creek Bridge last week. The project proposed to replace the superstructure on top of the supporting pillars across Whiskey Town Lake with a wider facility that has shoulders and provide also safe space and separated space for walking and biking activities over there. We potentially anticipate, depending on timing, because Caltrans District 2 is doing the environmental review, possibly having a presentation at a December meeting or later. That concludes my presentation of activities.
Any board members have questions, comment?
I have one quick question. What was the name of the program that you said had helped fund Cascade Village?
So that was the Affordable Housing Sustainable Communities. And so that we will see through 2045, another 800 million a year. So there's another components. K2 has been the biggest, local developer to try to make those programs work. And I know they've also worked with local tribes before as well. So
It's funding.
no, REAP is completely separate. REAP, Regional Early Action Program funds, was a one-time funding allocation. The AHSC funds are in. Yep. So we clarify emergency need because they're doing innovative concrete 3D printing products. That's a different group. K2 Development did Cascade Village in the city of Shasta.
But they stack funded that.
Yeah,
Correct.
we just had seven,
Before the public
7.9
thinks that
just
they
talked
got
about
one
refunding, are we not?
funding source, they stacked, I don't know, 6 or 8. I went to the meeting and
Correct. Yes, there was a
So
lot of
there's-
fund sources.
Yeah. Sean knows how to feel about affordable.
I do.
836,000 per unit. by
It's
the way.
just a much nicer way of saying government.
It's not affordable. I can't afford it. Build it.
We're having those discussions as part of that sheet.
Sorry. Kevin accused me of hijacking the meeting earlier. Of that.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you, Sean, for all you do.
Yep.
Thanks for serving on those committees, because it is our voice.
You're welcome. Yep.
Contributing, so I know it's your time, we appreciate it.
Yep, that's a, I see as a responsibility. We're always happy to help make sure that voice gets out there, so.
Thank you, Sean. So we're moving on to item 9. That's where any board members who have attended a meeting elsewhere want to give a report, even if they went remotely.
Yes, I did a lot of remote meetings. So a couple things, I mean, most of the stuff that we discussed is the updates, because the meetings were prior to the close of the legislature and the president's the that's fine, of the governor signing. So, but yes, remote, we've had some remote meetings, just to discuss policy and what's upcoming. Also, I'm serving on the fiscal policy committee as well. It's just, I think, important that our smaller counties and rural counties, give their perspective on decisions that are being made, especially since it's our California Council of Governments is our lobbying board. So we want to make sure that we're represented. So I've also had some meetings with this policy committee, and then there is another conference coming up in Southern California, but I will not be attending. It's just too expensive to get out there. So I'll be doing it remotely. It'll be on Zoom. I largely go to those things, but this one's way too expensive to get to. It's like, I just don't think it's a good use of our funds. So I'll do it by Zoom. And again, we'll probably be talking about the consequences of the decisions and what was signed into law and then what we will be doing going forward. But that was a good recap of the bills that actually went through. And as far as its consequences, I'll report back after that meeting. And if anybody wants to start coming to these conferences, anybody else is interested, you should start coming.
Any other board members? Okay, we are on item 10 to approve a preliminary 2026 Regional Transportation Improvement Program, the RTIP. John, you're back on.
Yeah, I am back on for this one. So this is next slide, please. This is every 2-year process that we go through. So sorry, there was maybe a misnomer. We don't have a workshop. I will briefly talk about the regional transportation program, how that is funded, and the cycle what that looks like. But in high level, every 2 years we have what is called the State Transportation Improvement Program. That is broken up in 2 components. There is a component about funding that's provided to regional agencies across the state. And that is where we develop the regional TIP, and then also Caltrans district, if they have funding out of that program, they develop an interregional TIP as a component. This is a 2-year process. We do it every 2 years and every odd year, and it's adopted by the California Transportation Commission every even numbered year. It's a 5-year list of transportation capital projects. One key component is that funding that is programmed in the STIP RTIP. Project phases must be fully funded or expected to be funded. So if they happen to have grant funding, but it's not available for 6 months, that would say still expected to be funded. So the graphic here at the bottom is an example in the blue. We're in the current 2024 STIP cycle, which goes all the way for programming potential projects that may be funded to 28-29. And then the next step will be for the period of fiscal years 26-27 to 2030-31. Next slide, please. How is the STIP funded? It's funded by a portion of the state fuel excise taxes. Here's a couple of graphics just from the chart provided by Caltrans. The most recent year is 24-25 fiscal year. And so I just highlight here is from the gasoline tax. And there's components that make up for the STIP through the base excise tax and then the income. Roughly about $1 billion every 2 years is provided in the STIP for regional agencies and for regional agencies. Next slide, please. And then this slide, chart 5, is just an example of how that is distributed. Essentially, out of the STIP, 75% of funds go to regional agencies, 25% goes to Caltrans. And then there's various ways it's distributed. Primarily, the big point here is that the funding, when it gets to each region, it's based upon a combination of county population as well as state highway miles. So that's important to know. It's just the state highway miles, not all road miles in the region that exist. And that's primarily because the STIP, as we have it, is focused on primarily the state highway system improvements, working with our conference districts on how to do those improvements for the most part. Next slide, please. There are a variety of different eligible projects. Highways, local roads can be, public transit, active transportation projects, sound walls, grade separation facilities, safety improvements. Notable other than what we call planning, programming, and monitoring funds, which is a set aside for regional agencies to carry out the TIP activities as part of our staff time. The only thing also that no non-capital projects are done. So that other than that, for our time for the TIP, we don't use it for planning for there. And then also road and transit maintenance is not an allowable expense. Next slide, please. In terms of policy, this board has adopted a policy in the past related to the priority of what RTIP funds are towards. That includes projects that are consistent with the regional transportation plan. Do those projects have the ability to leverage other funds or be able to multiply other different fund grant programs on top? Does it provide regional multimodal benefits? The likelihood of a project receiving full funding. So if we're being asked to provide STIP funds in advance, we look at that to say what program are you going to apply for, how funded is it, what phase are we looking at? And then also project cost sharing is a component. And usually what we also do is this towards new construction or reconstruction projects is the focus. Next slide, please.
Quick question.
Yes.
On the 2 slides now back, it says local roads is an eligible project, road and transit maintenance is ineligible.
Correct.
Does that mean we can build new local roads or like add lanes, but we can't use the funding to, resurface a road, for example?
Yes, you can't necessarily do it for resurfacing per se. An example might be overcrossings, right, over the highway system. For some of the facilities owned by Caltrans, usually the surface element is owned by the local jurisdictions often. So if you have some significant design changes you want to make to that, there's intersection improvements on either side. That could be something you had a complete redesign, or there was a widening of an overpass or something. Caltrans doing their part, then the local agency has their responsibility as well. So you might use some of those funds for something like that.
Okay.
So your exit funds basically should be saved for your matching funds for any of these types of projects that are upcoming for your cities.
That is our strategy.
It's a better, yeah.
Correct. 2 things we usually use them for. We usually try to use them for match to secure construction grants, or if we know a project that it's going to be a very extensive project, for example, Interstate 5 improvements, we sometimes will upfront in the early phases, the environmental phase or pre-design phase, to get roads funded, because those usually cost less. So we can then have the estimates and know, okay, how many tens of millions of dollars or hundreds of millions of dollars are we having to try to go for and get between federal and state funds. That's usually our strategy. That's just some examples of prior projects are listed on the left, and then also currently programmed projects. We're going to talk about currently programmed projects because that's the basis for how we develop each RTIP when we come to this every 2 years. So we do have on Interstate 5, it's the Cascade Gateway project. We have our PPM programming activities. And then we also have some ATP Cycle 6. We have match funds for 2 projects in the city of Reading, the Street Bogey and Victor Improvement Project. Next slide, please. So what I want to do is I want to go through the staff recommendations. These are preliminary. I'm looking for your feedback at the end of this. If there's anything else, or if you have any additional strategy you want me to look at before staff finishes preparing the draft document, because whatever we decide here today, our staff has to go back and do all the behind the scenes technical write-ups and forms and everything else. So that's why we come in with preliminary ideas and recommendations. Then the draft document will be issued in early November, and then the board will adopt the final document at our December board meeting. On the planning program monitoring fund side, we do have 200,000 in new shares to use towards supporting staff activities over the next 5 years. So we recommend programming those funds. Next slide, please. Street Bogey, previously, the SRTA had committed to providing 806,000 in match funds. Reading was successful in that project. It received ATP Cycle 6 funding. Currently, no additional funds are recommended. They're working on finishing up their design efforts, and then also ask for an extension that will probably push out their construction year to a later year than next year. So we'll be making some slight adjustments to reflect those changes and the approved actions by the Transportation Commission. Next slide, please. Similarly, Victor Improvement Project. 1 million in match funds that sort of committed to if it was funded. It received ATP Cycle 6 funding. We have no additional funds recommended at this point. I will clarify too, our match funds are for the construction phase of both those projects. Next slide, please. All right, next slide, Cascade Gateway. A few updates for you since the last time we met and some updates from Caltrans. I do have Caltrans staff here too for any additional updates, either questions or to clarify anything if I missed it. We have 9 million in prior funding through our STIP that was used to leverage. We did provided funding towards early environmental phase and design phase. And then we also have currently already programmed just over 5 million in funds for the construction phase of the project. In April of this year, Caltrans District 2 was getting close to finalize their designs for bids and finalize their cost estimates. At that time, Federal Highway Administration came back in their final review and said, hold on, we want you to change it from a 24/7 managed lane to a part-time managed lane project from the operating during peak periods, which was identified from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. That was a last minute request. Not anticipated and didn't expect they were going to have to deal with. Similarly, with the change, California Highway Patrol has requested additional traffic modeling to confirm the effectiveness of the proposed changes in traffic operations. With that, because of the timeframe that was going to needed to adjust, Caltrans and sort of went to the Transportation Commission to request an extension for allocating our construction funds. Because originally we planned to go to construction this fiscal year. That was not going to happen. That was approved. CTC was aware of it and did a 20-month extension. And so we have until February 2027 to get that project to construction. Fingers crossed it'll be much sooner.
That 24-hour lane, is that still the truck lane being the fast lane?
Yes, correct.
So-
That is still
So now it's only gonna be the truck lanes between 6 a.m. and 7 p.m.
That is correct. Yes, and that was the Federal Highway Administration request. The one thing that yeah, pros and cons, they have the
Is that
highway.
a pro?
The pro would be, well, one element, like for CHP's perspective, is from enforcement standpoint, if it's 24/7, you don't have all these time changes where you have to change it for enforcement. And there are also safety improvements and other things that conflict the Caltrans had identified that approach should help address through that area that is designed.
So at 7 p.m., all the trucks are gonna go from the fast lane back over to the slow lane.
Yes, and if they're a minute late,
No, I mean, they can be there. I think it just opens it up for other traffic as well.
For general
So
traffic.
They will go there, which will, all your transitions will not have so much congestion. But it'll be like, it's electronic, right? So it'll basically like tell you like, go ahead, you can be, anybody can be there.
I believe, yes, it would,
Yeah, so
the
it'll be-
electronic message signs that,
Yeah,
and that they'll be dynamic, we can change them
Yeah.
and so, and what that also helps with too is in those emergency situations where we have I-5 closed, we have trucks stacked up down at Anderson, right, we can identify where we want people to be and
yeah, it just creates a utility.
Trucks stop in this lane.
So that those trucks will know when you're coming through this section of town, you're moving to the left. And they can always do that. Their behavior can consistently be that. So all these transitions will be smoother for people coming on to the 5. But if you do need to use it for something else, now you have a way to add other people to that lane if they wanted to be. And move people that way so that your emergencies can come through on the right. So it sounds bad.
I don't know, is that correct, or do you want to explain that?
Am I wrong?
I think the only thing maybe.
Do you want to come up here?
I can, yeah. And I am, I'll speak to what I can. You guys may need a future, Q&A with one of our project management folks. I'm Brett Ditzler. I'm the Caltrans District 2 Deputy Director of Planning and Local Assistance. So you mentioned trucks being able to use that number 1 lane
What's the number one?
anytime.
What's the number one lane?
The far left lane,
The new lane for them?
correct.
The far left.
Yeah,
Okay,
but
so they
it's-
can't use it anytime.
They can't use it, so trucks will be in there on
7 to 5.
7 to 6, whatever it was, 6 to 7, thank you. During the nighttime hours, I don't believe they'll be similar to what it is now to where they can use the middle
But-
lane.
Are you saying that they would be excluded from using that lane sometimes?
Yes,
That would make no sense.
They are, well, they are now.
they are now, yeah.
They
Oh,
are
yes,
now.
but I'm
Yes,
saying,
they are
I'm
right
saying
to
if you
lane.
make them a special lane, but you're gonna tell them that then they can't use that lane sometimes,
The
cause that would be
reader board
weird.
will.
Correct. That's why it's a
See,
managed
That's
lane.
Told ya.
Yeah, that's.
It's not the full-time truck lane.
so when that lane's in use, as you're driving a truck, I mean, you're coming through my neck of the woods in Cottonwood and Anderson, trucks are in the slow lane. When you hit Reading, trucks can be in the middle lane because of all the incoming ongoing traffic. And when you get to that section, they go into the left lane. That's the dedicated truck lane, and we still haven't figured out how a truck passes another truck, but that's a story for a different day. And then when you across the lake, or you get across the lake, they go back for the right lane.
Before the lake, it's
Before the lake.
it's up near
O'Brien or something, or not.
north of the Shasta Lake.
Highway 1.
Hey, don't worry, we're still trying to funnel them through Cottonwood.
What's your exit port? No, where your port is,
Mountain Gate.
Mountain Gate, there you go.
Yeah, yes, it's somewhere, we have to get specific, so it's somewhere down there.
What could go wrong?
Everything. What is their rationale for that? Cause that doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yes, because we,
For
What's the
rationale.
rationale? What's the rationale
because
for
we
not
can't get
having
any
a
money for
dedicated
a
lane in
dedicated
that
car, they
section?
won't give us any money. for
That's the
that.
direction we're going, and that's what Sean talked about with the FHWA approval. FHWA is requiring a Washington level approval for that being a dedicated truck full-time lane.
It just also doesn't make sense in California if they're basically
Could have stopped there.
going against capacity. Now you are saying that they want you to go for more capacity. That doesn't make any sense.
Truck capacity, not car
It's not-
capacity.
No,
Yeah.
but this would give you all capacity.
Well, I know, but they're not supposed to use that lane for a car.
During the day is when we have the high volumes, right? And that's when it is truck only. So it's not increasing
Capacity.
actual capacity. Yeah.
It's
So-
not my priority to not have capacity. I'm just saying, all of this is very conflicting.
Can we put a bike lane put in that, maybe a roundabout? Because it's all right.
Now you're talking.
So, Vanessa, the entire project is to get 3 lanes. We don't care how the reader board's going to finally manage them.
True.
Really, but then how are
Let's
you gonna
just
get
get it
trucks
built.
to do it if it's like, you don't create a.
This is
habit?
just a little monkey in it right now. And it's all in the.
This is
reader
how we
board.
have to get the funds.
This is
So
how we get
once we
capacity.
get the funds and it doesn't work, then, you know, we'll have
And
to
the
adjust
big
from.
problem that I see is so many truck drivers can't read English, or how the reader board's gonna work.
Well, one of the things also
Residents
with the
make them.
project is that through this area of the corridor, we have a lot of conflicts. We have some interchanges, highway interchanges that are shorter in terms of both the approaches and the way vehicles leave. This help alleviate that where it conflicts with semi trucks when the vehicles are getting. I do it all the time. I'm sure you all do, especially at 44 up here when we have those.
Yeah.
Getting those the way that will play out. So there's a lot of safety elements. It's also going to allow us to deal with some northbound issues that we experienced during winter. Where we had the issue of, hey, it stopped because of snow, next thing you know, all these trucks are in every lane. And emergency services and local traffic cannot get on or off the highway at all because every on and off ramp is blocked. So they allow Caltrans to work with CHP to manage that as well, especially in the northbound section. So there are multiple benefits that we're getting on this project. We're gonna be able to have those lanes. With those efficiencies, it will improve the traffic flow, so we will be able to operate at a higher capacity. There's no new capacity, there's the ability to operate higher capacity down the road, and it will be an ever-evolving process that Caltrans will be evaluating as well in talking with their leadership.
So we're adding an extra lane just through that corridor right there. So
Correct.
the bottleneck happens further up,
Mountain Gate,
Mountain Gate, okay.
Which where
How many miles is this stretch that we'll be adding on third lane?
3.
I think it's more than that.
it's closer to more like 9
Yeah,
is what it is on each side. In total, where the improvements and where the managed lane system is.
The new 3rd lane is only for less than 3 miles.
Correct, it's about 3-4 miles total, give or take, depending on the south and or northbound section, but the total section. And the way that they're gonna be managed to reduce those conflicts and changes. On there. So with that,
sounds.
as Caltrans went to finalize, the final design did have some increased costs, both on SRTA's portion and Caltrans's portion. For us, it's roughly almost 2.7 million. So I'm recommending that we program those funds now because that is a known cost. And the Transportation Commission staff have asked that we do that now for our cost sharing component of the project. Caltrans' side includes an additional 10 million on their side to fund for improvements that they finalize the plans. As of last week, talking with Caltrans, we've had no increased costs at the moment due to the delays in getting the project funded with FHWA requests and CHPs. However, because who knows how long that review would take with CHP and FHWA, there could likely potentially be some unplanned, construction costs by the time Caltrans goes to bid. I'm also recommending that we set aside an additional 2 million in program shares that at the time in which bids come in, Caltrans can just request those from the CTC if needed, if that is the case that we have going forward. Next slide, please.
Thank you. From the CTC.
That total project is 114.
Well, it'll be a little more 126 when you look at all the costs and all the prior work and other stuff. Caltrans also has some other state highway operations program funds for maintenance of other components. So they have another project they're doing. So when this project goes out, they're also going to do some of the highway maintenance on the other side of it. So it all gets done at one time. So Caltrans is being efficient with timing of maintenance and other things as well. So total project area is going to be a bit more, but this is the fixed 5 Cascade Gateway portion. Looking ahead, future highway ATP projects. I'm recommending no new projects to add at this moment with the current RTIP. But I am recommending we set aside remaining funds for future needs. Several things we have been in discussion with Caltrans on is some projects that are in what they call their project initiation document. That's their planning phase for projects as they finalize some initial designs. They have some road improvements related to semi-truck access at 3 locations in our region. There may be an opportunity to partner there for some improvements in the future. Also, their Safer 273 project, which will provide medium barriers as well as lighting. They have, since the last time that they had their update, they had some design things that came up that were anticipated that they're reviewing. And because of state budget situation, that it has impacted their shop program, there may be need a partner. And so we maybe talked about some possible funds 6 to 9 months from now. There may be a request. Caltra is still looking at that, whether it's needed, or they might come to us for a request. Additionally, active transportation cycle 8 is coming up. For cycle 7, this board had already previously approved matching funds for 2 Reading projects and 1 City of Shasta Lake project. Those projects had scored very high. However, because of the governor moving around funds and he backfilled the active transportation program previously with, half of it with general fund funds, and they took those out. The ATP Cycle 7 program was gutted to fully fund ATP Cycle 6 projects, which we had 2, so they stayed funded. Based upon discussions with our local jurisdictions, Reading does intend to apply for their 2 prior projects for ATP Cycle 6. And Shasta Lake intends to apply for their ATP project for cycle 8. Those 3 projects estimated at the time, 2 years ago, was 4.1 million. They're reviewing those cost estimates and the designs. Because the application period is not till June, we will likely not have updated cost estimates until roughly April for the board to come back. And so I'm recommending that we take our remaining funds, next slide, please. 6.8 million and leave them on program for these future needs, both for highway improvements and active transportation match. We do have non-motorized program funds that we would also use to match enrollment from a regional non-motorized program. And so we use it as leverage. We anticipate by the time these projects are funded, we'd at least have 3 million in that account. And so we would pick and choose, we would pull funds out of that first before this time. Overall, with staff recommendations, between about 7.4 million in carryover program funds, 4.9 million in new programming, we're leveraging over 150 million in transportation investments, even additional funds to use it to leverage for future programs as well. I'll leave that for any questions by the board. And ask for a recommended approval of staff recommendation.
Do we have any additional questions?
When would we have to have the 6.8 committed or spent? by 2028?
No, so so our STIP shares that are provided to us are ours to use indefinitely. For each cycle, they are tracked and made available to us. The only time that those get used is in a future cycle for new program shares. So from what we have from part M program, those carry over. Same thing happens, for example, say we fund a project 3 years from now for environmental phase, and then later it's determined it's less of a priority, we decide not to do that. And we say, you know what? We're gonna wait on that project, we're gonna put it aside for now for other priorities. Those program shares eventually come back to us and they're made available for use. So these funds don't expire.
So but we don't have them. It's not like we're holding that money.
No, the state's holding on to
Okay.
it. So I'd like that to change. I would be great if when we have an allocation, we could actually have it allocated to us to hold an account, but that's not how that program works.
Okay, so
The
we're gonna
Caltrans
reimburse.
folks are laughing. They're like, yeah, it'd be great if we had the cash. Like, come on, that's money.
Now I wanted the interest of that, right?
Right.
You know,
Correct. We thought about
as
that
long as
as
we
well.
want and just let it accrue
Maybe
interest.
we'll try to work with some regional rural partners
Yeah.
and push that down the road. Who knows? We'll see. But that's higher up. But no, those funds don't expire.
So to understand that, so cycle 7 didn't get funded, but they back funded 6 to be fully funded, and now we have the projects that we would have had the money for 7 we're gonna use 8 funds to pay for 7.
Correct. Looking back on it, we reported previously.
We don't have new projects that we're talking about, so we don't.
So the jurisdictions are the other projects, but priority wise, when they look at projects, so for example, for Reading staff, their Hilltop Improvement Project, they're also working Caltrans District 2 on a bridge widening project over I-5 at Hilltop Drive. So they want to time those two projects. So that's a priority for them. It was in last cycle. Had the ATP Cycle 7 project program actually had the roughly 500 million in normal funding, it's likely at least 2 of these 3 projects would have been funded previously, based upon how they scored. There's no guarantee this next cycle who's going to have a score, but we at least admit that we should do well. And should we even anticipate a couple of them potentially receiving funding in the future?
I'll make a motion.
Okay. So Vanessa made a motion that we agree with this recommendation, and Kelstrom seconded that. Everybody agree, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you.
I'd like to do something a little bit different. We have about half a dozen public here. I would like anybody who would like to introduce themselves and tell us who they are and who they represent are free to do so at this point. If you'd like to start, if you wouldn't, you just pass.
Happy to, guys. Apologies for the late arrival. I'm Brody Wolfhorn. I'm the organization planner for Reading Area Bus Authority. Masked up because I just flew back in from Phoenix. I do this every time I travel back. So thanks for having us today.
Thank you.
Working Harmon, District 3 County Supervisor.
Natalie Kinney, Caltrans District 2 Regional and System Planning.
You guys met me, but Brett Nitzler, Caltrans District 2 Deputy District Director for Planning and Local Assistance.
I'm Dave Colacott, Director of Transportation for Community Health Connected Vision.
I should be a regular face. I'm an assistant transportation planner.
Okay, you were already introducing staff, but we'll let you do it in a second.
I appreciate the spot.
Moin Kalei, Associate Transportation Planner at SRTA.
Sean Ankeny, Principal Engineer with Shasta County Department of Public Works.
Okay, thank you for doing that. We are now on item 11, which is to approve Senate Bill 125 transfer project modification and additions for submissions to the California State Transportation Agency.
Yeah. 1 second here, and I'll get some presentation material up.
All right. Thank you, Chair Watkins, and good morning, members of the board. I will be presenting on item 11, which is a request for the CERTA board to approve project modifications and additions to CERTA's Senate Bill 125 transit program. for submission to the California State Transportation Agency, or CalSTA. As a quick reminder, SB 125 provides regional formula funding through the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program, or TIRCP, and the Zero Emission Transit Capital Program, ZETCP, or as I call it, ZETCP. SRTA administers these funds for the Shasta region in coordination with the Reading Area Bus Authority, or RABA, and previously Dignity Health Connected Living. The board previously approved the initial allocation package to CalSTA back in December of 2023, subrecipient cooperative agreements in 2024, and a scope modification in February of 2025 that allowed for the diesel hybrid bus purchases under the Regional Ridership Retainage and Growth. Moving on to the proposed modifications, these can be visualized in Table 1 of Attachment A, or on the screen behind me. We have two previously approved projects that are being updated. We have the North State Intercity Passenger Transit System, which is highlighted. The changes happening to that are highlighted in blue and green in Table 1. And those changes are the previously set aside $100,000 for the transit demand study is being moved to the R3 project, Regional Ridership Retainage and Growth, for transit operations and micromobility partnerships. The demand study was no longer needed, and the project will now focus on renewable diesel bus procurement, plus operational support and marketing for a revised Reading to Sacramento I-5 corridor service, which is replacing the State Route 99 alignment to Chico to Reading. The other modification we have is the Regional Ridership Retainage and Growth Project, R3. This project continues to be the regional workforce supporting RABA's capital and operational needs. We're adding the 100,000 transfer from the intercity project I just mentioned, and combining the DHCL pilot van into RABA's procurement, resulting in 7 electric vans instead of 6. And those can be seen in red on Table 1 of Attachment A. All other subcomponents, electric bus match, diesel hybrid replacements, and micro transit operations remain funded. And next we have some new projects which can be seen in Table 2 of Attachment A. SRTA and RABA have collaborated to direct the remaining unallocated $6.16 million in TIRCP funds towards 4 projects. The projects are Ellis Street Site Improvement Project in the amount of $2.19 million, which will expand RABA's bus parking area and prepares the site for future zero emission charging and hydrogen fueling infrastructure. We have $500,000 for passenger amenities to install new bus shelters, or not bus shelters, new passenger shelters, benches, solar lighting and signage, and acquires 37 Lamar-owned shelters for RABA to control, which will be maintained by MTM.
So those shelters already exist and RABA is just buying them from Lamar.
That is my understanding, and they will be maintained by MTM, who is current contract.
Those electric vans, what's the range on those single charge? I know the buses are like 120 miles.
So the ProMaster that we've got right now, we are able to interchange on most of the local city routes. So I'd love to give you like a solid range on it, but I can say that right now, where we cover the city, they can go anywhere and do one of the fixed routes.
Like an 8-hour shift or, okay, and that's stop and go, heater, air conditioning.
Yep,
Okay.
and what we do right now with them is when the drivers on those particular vans take breaks for their lunches in the midday, they'll come back and rotate onto the charger. Part of what we're also doing with the existing pilots that we've had is installing a different location for an additional charger to run those particular vans so that we can have the ability to pivot off of that. So, but I'd say if you were gonna put like a number to it, it'd be 90 miles to 105.
But that's stop and go traffic cones. I mean,
Yeah, that's everywhere. in the-
Right, okay.
Yeah,
All right.
we use them regularly on Reading's coverage for the demand response service coverage. That's driving around town all over Dodge, parking to traffic and the lights with air conditioning working.
So they work much more efficient than a full-size bus.
Yeah, Compared to the Proterra, it's night and day.
Excuse me, Chair.
Yes.
John Ando has his hand raised. Would the chair recognize him?
Saw your trolley the other day. Yes.
It's so good.
So does he want to speak?
Yeah, he's requesting.
He's requesting to speak.
I'm probably either correcting or adding to
Yeah,
what I put on there, because I just wanted to give it.
Okay, so John, you want to add to that?
Yeah, do you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, the range is 90 miles for the vans.
And that's stop and go though, right, John?
At stop and go, air conditioning running, fully occupied. So it could be basically between 90 and 120. We presently have one of the vans in service today that we use for demand response services, and these would only be used for demand response.
And this is for the 5 new electric vans.
That is correct. 7.
So it's just consolidating. There was previously a van for DHCL. And now that RABA is the CTSA operator, we've been able to just consolidate all of those projects under RABA. So it's not an addition or anything like that. It's just a consolidation for that one.
Yeah, I think it's good to move them to Rabbit.
Definitely, yeah.
What we're also finding too, especially in our travels with other municipalities, is the change in goal with the transit agencies is collaboration and consolidation of resource. They're finding if we're going in as bigger groups and doing smaller amounts of grant submissions on it to demonstrate the need for an area versus just an entity, the Fed approval rating is tending to be significantly better and a little bit more willing to be when we're saying, hey, we work together already. We don't want to do separate grants for the Reading area. Here's your master plan.
Great, thank you for the question. So the 2 remaining new projects will be the replacement fare box and transit signal priority for the amount of 1 million. This replaces outdated Gen fare boxes with a modern fast fare units and expands Opticom equipment to improve schedule reliability, which Opticom is my understanding that those are the transit signal priority devices.
Can I interrupt you on that one? Aaron, didn't we put those new fare boxes in? They're outdated like me, because I'm over 60, but I mean, they're not that old. I'm not that old, by the way. I was early on in my RABA. Thanks for laughing that. Thank you. You're there for me, bro.
John.
But yeah, okay, John, do you want to clarify? Because seems like we put those fare boxes in. Spent another $1 million on new touchless.
I'm not aware of the age of them, so
Yeah.
John, if you could clarify.
So we discussed this at the RABA board meeting in November of 24. The fare boxes are 2019s and also 1999s. And what is happening is the 1999s are no longer supported. We've parted out as many as we can, and they're just not counting data anymore. The 2019s, you cannot buy any more of those, but they still are functional. But we suspect there's going to be a day when those ones will be like the 1999s. So basically, we just at a point where we need to replace all 46 fare boxes to have the latest and greatest model that Genfair has to offer, so we can have better support and better data collection.
I thought we replaced all of them, but no, it was apparently my lack of skill in C. All right. Thanks.
Yeah, if it's any consolation, Mike, on that, you know how you tell me to run it broken down? We're out of parts to even be able to run any more done than we can do. That's, I am kudos to the contractor shop, because these guys try to make anything and everything work. But we have Ford parts on that electric Proterra bus, and Proterra didn't even know you could put Ford parts on it, but we figured it out. So we're just at that point where we don't have any more physical resource from that vendor to be able to make this continue to work without a different approach.
When we show this allocation being for fiscal year 24-25, does that mean that that was already spent or because?
So these are, the fiscal year is pertaining to the program years. And so this has been available to us and we didn't have projects to allocate the funds yet, or we hadn't developed them. And so, these are fiscal year 24-25 and 25-26 funds. They do not expire once we encumber them, and we can also collect interest.
And we do.
And we do.
Consent down.
So this is the date that we receive the funds. And then we will allocate them in this upcoming fiscal year.
Correct. So once we coordinate with CalSTA, we will submit a request for these funds and then they will send us a check for the remainder unallocated funds.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. All right, last new project, transit operations support, which is 2.47 million, and it provides ongoing operating assistance for RABA's fixed route and paratransit services. And so the next steps, if approved today, SRTA will submit the updated allocation package to CalSTA for review. Once CalSTA approves, staff will amend the RABA sub-recipient cooperative agreement and release funds for eligible reimbursement. This action ensures that all regional SB 125 allocations are programmed and supports RABA's transition toward a cleaner, more efficient transit operations. The recommendation is for the board to approve the proposed modifications and additions as outlined in attachment A and authorize the executive directors to submit the updated allocation package to CalSTA and make minor administrative adjustments in coordination with RABA as needed. And just for posterity, we have a summary of all of the proposed projects, including our existing approved projects. And also for reference, the Ellis Street project, I have a map of it here, and you should also have a map provided as well. Yeah. And this is just to show where those improvements will be taking place.
So part of that is city land across the alley there or what in the green?
I'm not sure.
Yes.
So,
Right.
if you put your mouse kind of over that,
It's where the shelter.
Greg, what you're
Yeah.
looking at is the back portion of what used to be that recycling center that we acquired pretty much from the tree line all the way to the apartment complex on that. So the existing temporary fencing that's in there for that micro housing unit was a collaborative project that we were a part of. But it's still part of that existing lot that we can just take the temporary fencing out of and have the lot open back up.
So the green would become part of the RABA lot.
Yes.
And
We would
then it
basically
talks
take out-
about installing infrastructure for future hydrogen plant.
Basic on that could be as simple as us actually going in and finishing that lot with legitimate pavement that would be able to hold load for anything. So right now, that is a desolate mess of what used to be the recycling center that's got all kinds of concrete and junk. I think our initial things of any of the project review that we would do there to start would be to get that even capable of holding a bus on it. I wouldn't let anybody take one in there right now as a set.
So there's been no decision whether a hydrogen refueling station would be there, like if waste management goes to hydrogen also, would they be able to share this or?
I mean, in theory on that, but I would let John talk more to elaborate on it. I'll just say that you can consider that even any type of hydrogen infrastructure can come in on a truck trailer. It doesn't have to be permanent. So we're not saying we're committing to anything as it relates to build out. We're simply making sure that if we do move forward on this infrastructure development, that it's adequate and suits the continued needs of development and growth for Rama.
If any board members have additional questions?
Chair Watkins, sorry, John Ando does have his hand raised.
Oh, okay, John, you're on.
Yeah, just for clarity, right now we're leasing the property to the city of Reading so they can do the micro housing. We do have 1 year lease with them on this, and should we be ready to do the project, the lease would end and then we could start the project. We will be bringing before the RABA board a zero emissions bus implementation plan to basically lay out how we're going to launch zero emissions to comply with the state law. There are options on how we can develop this partial, which could include more bus parking with battery electric chargers and/or a hydrogen station. So we're going to leave it to the RABA board to give us direction once they receive a copy of that plan, and then we'll go from there.
Chargers are currently,
Pardon me?
how many electric chargers are currently at that facility?
We have 3.
Mike, since you bought the obsolete fare boxes, did you want a motion to approve this? Buy some more?
Do it. I make the motion.
I'll second in
Thanks.
Before I dig, I have one additional question. What constitutes renewable diesel?
That's a great question. I am not familiar with that. I believe it is cut with corn, like corn, like,
Yeah, like corn.
yeah.
So we're not just using the fat from McDonald's?
They might, I'm not totally
Because
familiar.
there was that guy who drove that diesel mini car all the way to South America on fat that he got from the diesel.
A McDiesel?
From McDonald's.
Chair Watkins, may I recommend we ask John Ando, I'm sure.
Okay, John, you're gonna tell us what renewable diesel is?
What you're talking about with fats is biodiesel.
Basically, it's clean diesel. We haven't tried biodiesel on the RABA fleet, but I am open to biodiesel. I did do that while I was in Hawaii County. So I just need to do further research to see if biodiesel is available through our current fuel vendor and how it would impact the current buses since they've been using the clean diesel for a while. I had the 20 while I was in Hawaii County and it worked out great.
And this is second, so let's vote.
Okay, so we are back. We've had a motion by Gallagher and seconded by CalSTA.
No, by Aaron Resner.
The other way around?
Resner.
Oh, Resner second.
She also was part of the purchase. You have to forget. Obsolete fare.
Okay,
boxes.
so that is to go forward with the staff recommendations.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We hear nothing. Pass it. unanimous.
I'm just.
I mean, let's make a note of that. You.
Yeah.
Councilor, let the record reflect.
Thanks, Lorraine. Good job.
Gallagher supported elected people.
Okay, we are on item 12. Approve a technical service agreement to develop the Shasta Regional Freight Plan with Transpo Group and not to exceed 200,000. That'd be Keith.
Yes, thank you. So I'll just sit from here and try to project. If you can't hear me, just let me know. So good morning, members of the board again, regional partners, and I guess members of the public, if you're looking online. The Shasta region does not have a freight plan. And without one, local jurisdictions risk legislative compliance obsolescence and ineligibility for competitive grant programs. To say nothing of the region's needs to plan for increased freight volumes, improved safety, efficiency, and air quality, and interregional strategic coordination on the development of freight activities. To better meet SRTA's Regional Transportation Plan or RTP goal of keeping people and freight moving safely, efficiently, and effectively, staff identified a need to develop a region-wide freight plan that includes regional goals, objectives, strategies, and policies aligning with California's transportation and freight plans, SRTA's RTP, and federal and state legislation. Staff have wrapped up a 3-month procurement process to find a freight planning consultant to assist with the development of the Shasta Regional Freight Plan. We received proposals from 4 firms. We are very grateful to Caltrans District 2 and local agencies from the Shasta region who all volunteered to assist to join SRTA staff and participate on our review committee. where we arrived at consensus scores that evaluated proposals from Transpo Group and Fair and Peers evenly and well ahead of the competition. So we invited each of these firms to interview. Both firms presented very well, but in the end, the review committee recommends awarding the contract to Transpo Group, who offers significant freight industry knowledge, and their well-organized proposal thoughtfully and thoroughly responded to the RFP while meeting SRTA's budget expectations. SRTA staff recommend the board approve a technical services agreement with Transpo Group to develop the Shasta Regional Freight Plan for a term ending on June 30th, 2027, at a not to exceed budget threshold of $200,000, authorizing the executive director to make minor administrative amendments. That's my presentation.
Okay, any board members have any questions or comments?
I'll second. One quick question, where will the 200,000 come to pay for this?
That's SB1 funding. I think we also have, local transportation funds at that.
Keith,
That's on page.
what's the organization that is driving that? Who's telling us that we'll be out of compliance? Sorry
That's,
for lack of a better way of putting it, it's the only thing we're gonna get.
it's just some state legislation that passed AB 98. I think it was a year and a half ago. And so there are some elements to the legislation that local jurisdictions will need to comply with. And so we wanted to try and
Resistance is
help out.
futile. Sorry.
It's okay. We just wanted to try and help out at the regional level so that local jurisdictions have the data, the planning necessary to help them towards meeting that. There is some additional work the local agencies will need to do after this plan is completed, but this should help them a lot towards that.
Can I ask, are we talking about 18-wheelers rolling up and down, I-5 and 273? Or are we talking about Amazon vans running through the neighborhoods? What are we?
So
what are we?
it's
help me
kind of
understand.
combination. I mean,
It's all of it.
really, we already have federal legislation that identifies urban freight corridors, but now there's this legislation where we need to identify rural freight corridors. So it will accommodate, yes, the big, large trucks, but also smaller vans. We need to really be thinking about freight, comprehensively, from planes all the way down to whatever micro mobility options there are for delivering freight.
So Keith, this rural plan for freight moving is to get to like the Reading Airport, to get to Amazon on rural roads, and has nothing to do with the state highway system.
No, I wouldn't characterize it as such, but there has been a recent push to identify critical rural freight corridors in addition to these urban freight corridors. And since we have a region that comprises both, we're going to be looking at this holistically.
So the RFP was asking for the rural freight routes.
Also, yeah.
And just a comment, I noticed on attachment B that all the bids are exactly the same. You had 4 bids, and it must have been hard to pick the winner when all 4 bid the exact same amount. It's 200,000.
Very close indeed, yeah. So that's why we have different factors that we consider when we're on the review committee, cost being one of them, but also value and experience and how well they responded to the proposal. And so all these come into.
Once you tell them you have 200,000 available, they're all going to bid 200,000. Is that correct?
It does. History does seem to indicate that this is not a trend, unfortunately. We have tried to sort of work with the language to elicit proposals that veer away from that threshold. I did research into this a little bit to see how past procurements fared when we offered a range. And unfortunately, even with I didn't find too many examples, but where I did find an example, it did end up towards the top of the range as well. So I don't know. I mean, we were open to suggestions. We'll continue to play with this to try and get more realistic.
Have a point of it. These aren't bids. If these were truly bids, it would be awarded by lottery.
Yeah.
So these people know that there's $200,000 and they made a response that they can do for $200,000.
And this is due April 27th, so it's like an 18 month.
It's not due then, but that's what we have set. Sorry?
As a deadline?
As a deadline, yes.
Okay, any other questions, comments? We have a first by Aaron and a second by Chris. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It passes. Thank you very much, there, Keith.
Thank you.
So we are on item 13. We're going to receive an update on the regional railroad grade crossing plan and direct staff to apply for strategic partnership planning grant. Hi.
Good morning, Chair Watkins and fellow directors. I'm here to provide a three-part recommendation. First of which is to receive this update on efforts to fund and develop a railroad crossing plan. As a reminder, the Board of Directors unanimously directed staff to begin this effort at the April 2025 board meeting as part of approving the Envision 273. Next slide, please. Railroad has been a mixed blessing for the Shasta region. Railroad literally founded Reading, made transportation of people and freight much faster and much easier, and was a vital force in the economic development of the region. But today, the railroad right-of-way poses numerous and increasing challenges for regional mobility. Next slide. Those challenges can result in congestion, travel delays, property loss, injury, and potentially death. Next slide.
How do you get that phone?
I have skills. I found it on the internet. It's a screen grab from a video. I staged it.
It's dark.
As the transportation network grew with the arrival of the automobile, it became quite clear early on that grade separation was the safest solution due to speeds and volumes, despite the cost. Next slide. Grade separations are very complex, very expensive, and only suitable to specific locations. In urbanized areas, they can disrupt travel and commerce around the ramps, leading to and from the overpasses, create visual blight, and are often difficult or unappealing for non-motorized travelers to use. Next slide, please. One of the primary challenges in our region is that the railroad was largely here first. Most of the main right-of-way dates back to the 1870s or 1880s. In the past, state and local governments were able to force or incentivize railroads to alter their operations or provide infrastructure to remedy blocked crossings. Many cities were able to require rail roadway grade separations paid for in part or entirely by railroads. In addition, many states had laws limiting the time that grade crossings could be blocked. Past legislation and recent court cases have essentially eliminated all of this local leverage. Next slide, please. Other regional challenges include geographic challenges, such as the Sacramento River, Interstate 5, and State Route 273. For example, typical railroad right-of-way is 100 feet on the center line, 50 feet on either side, shown here roughly in yellow. 273 is right up against the railroad right. And then you have west side and east side right up against that.
That's kind of like an extra $1 a gallon of gas to keep our roads in great shape.
Yeah.
It's a
little bit of voice cracking.
I think that's some older imagery. I think it's been redone.
It's so worse now, you're saying?
No, I think it's been.
Image is 2025.
Yeah, that's not always right, though.
It's been resurfaced.
It makes sense is what I'm saying, when
Chris.
2023, when 273 KG project is on our list. Thanks, keep going.
Thank you. And of course, the costs of creating new crossings of the river or the interstate are high. For example, Caltrans had to adjust an I-5 overcrossing near Anderson by a few feet as part of the Reading 6-lane project, and it added 20 million to project costs. Next slide, please.
That's what they demanded, that we put enough room for a second track. That wasn't a couple feet, by the way, so let me correct you on that. And it added a bunch to your point, but it wasn't a couple feet. And they demanded that and we all paid for it. So let's just be clear.
Okay, thank you. So this is the first fund source we've identified for this potential study. It's called the Strategic Partnerships Planning Grant. It funds transportation planning studies in partnership with Caltrans that address regional, interregional, and statewide needs of the state highway system and assist in achieving the Caltrans mission and grant program objectives. There's only 1.5 million available with a minimum award of 100,000 and a maximum award of 500,000. But this program is not oversubscribed usually, unlike some of the other programs we've identified. So we think we have a good chance here. It does require a local match, but there is a potential waiver for that we're looking into. Next slide, please. This is what we're proposing to study. This is the railroad right-of-way through the Shasta region. Basically, it kind of circles around Cottonwood and then bisects Anderson, Reading, Shasta Lake. And then there's additional crossings north of the city of Shasta Lake and the lake itself that we're going to take a look at, but not study super hard. Most of our efforts going to be focused on this area from Shasta Lake down to Cottonwood. Next slide. So this is a draft scope of work. Right now, the grant application is due November 21st. And so we're in the process of refining our application, refining our scope of work for maximum competitiveness. Right now, we're estimating a budget on this between 350 to 500,000. And these are the primary tasks in the effort. So we have project initiation, that's having the meetings with the consultant and the local partners, stakeholder outreach, gathering information on existing conditions, assessing how current conditions are performing, identifying potential projects, strategies to address that, selecting and prioritizing solutions, and then draft and final reports. Kind of a standard planning scope of work. Next slide, please. But what we are hoping to have some input on are any part of the scope of work, but we've identified these particular task items as probably the areas of highest interest. And that's stakeholder outreach. So we're planning on consulting the public, directors of public works, planning staff with cities and counties, or cities and county, first responders, including law enforcement, fire, and EMTs, chambers of commerce, the trucking association. Is there anyone we're missing? We also are wondering if there's any areas of particular interest that you want us to take a look at. That would be something like looking at moving the railroad crossing at Breslau to Buenaventura, or addressing the overcrossing in Shasta Lake City, or addressing the crossings in Anderson.
Are you asking?
Yeah, and we'll come to that point here in just a sec. I'm almost done. Next slide.
Excellent.
Yeah, here's an example of what's now a substandard crossing. The current clearance is posted at 13 feet, 11 inches. Standard clearance is 14 feet in urbanized areas, 16 feet in rural. Next slide. So here's the timeline. Like I said, the application is due on November 21st, and we're going to be working right up to the very last minute to get this polished and as competitive as can be. We submit it, and then awards will be announced in summer of next year. And then we will take it back to the board for acceptance. And if we're lucky, we can get a notice to proceed from Caltrans as early as November of next year. And then we have to be done by June of 2029, but we haven't decided, if we're going to necessarily take that long yet. Next slide. So that concludes my presentation, or my update on efforts. And so now we're looking for input on our draft scope of work and direction to apply for the grant.
Okay, board members, any input?
I'm assuming that this will identify which crossings you guys want to. The plan to, then I think there's a list of them.
Yeah, so the plan is gonna look at all crossings and figure out, what's the best candidate. Laurent, can you go back to the slide with the UP logo on it?
Yeah, how many we have? How many crossings?
It's in the staff report, one sec. Or I thought it was, but maybe it's not. No, I'm thinking of my grant application. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I want to say it's no more than 60, but that might include private crossings. Because there are some crossings, where like a ranch owner has a crossing. So,
Around, give or take, around 60. How, and for what you get, how many would you have to be able to?
so these are the requirements we discovered as part of the 273 planning process. They propose for establishing a new at-grade crossing, you have to sacrifice 3 or more existing at-grade crossings, which is just nuts, right? But, and they also consider, where'd it go? It's not on here, but, they also consider a major reconfiguration to be a new crossing. But it's not sure if by that they mean the 3-for-1 sacrifice, or if they just have to evaluate it by their engineering standards.
So even if you're fixing one that currently exists, that's new.
So, well, it depends on the railroad. So, we found out that Deer Van was recently redone, right? And we didn't sacrifice 3 for that. So it depends on if the railroad has a mutual interest. And so we've reached out, we've got a contact now at UP. We're scheduling a meeting hopefully for next week. We're going to ask them for a letter of support for this effort and try and get them to be a partner. And, but basically, yeah, so we have to look at everything. We have to go, well, does it make sense to sacrifice 3 for a new at grade? If so, where can we sacrifice the 3? The problem with 273 is it needs an additional like grade separated overcrossing, but there's just no room. There's no room there. You've got the frontage roads, you've got the highway, you've got the built up businesses, some of the businesses are right up against like West Side Road. So it's a challenge. And so that's what we're hoping the consultant can help us.
Just the last one, just like, I'll be quiet, is, I would add to that any of our partners that like our Trails Alliance, or people that actually are walking and biking and trying to get from here to there.
Okay.
Just seems, I know you said public, the public, but I mean, obviously neighborhoods, those neighborhoods, I don't know what you consider, what public means, but something that outreaches to the neighborhoods and then also to, the people that are maintaining trails and are always talking to people that are using those types of modalities.
Okay.
I'm not sure whether or not they would have any sort, so it would just be worth asking, but the gentleman who is the, it's like Frontier Rural for Amazon. From here may just have some good insight because they're shipping a ton through a lot of rural counties. That maybe they just have some ideas of things that have worked well in other rural areas that they just would benefit us, like maybe nothing, but they might have some ideas because they are moving through rural counties.
Yeah, definitely worth looking into.
Thank you, Michael, for your report. I think it's important for the public to understand that Union Pacific Railroad is owned by the Union Pacific Corporation with major holders, including investment firms like Vanguard Fiduciary Trust Company and BlackRock Advisors LLC. Those are 2, stellar companies, obviously in America. What happened is rich people made our state legislature let them off the hook, and now the public is going to pay dearly for trying to get people safer. And while they just get the profits. So I think those are the kind of things that I'm just going to continue to bring up. I won't go off too hard on that, but it's really important that we understand what's actually happening here. I think you should do the study. I know there's some issues. I'm not denying the need for the study, but what's really happening here is the taxpayers are getting screwed again by the major corporations of America, and those two holdings companies are evil. So there's my 2 cents.
So you're not making a motion?
Well, not on this one.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I have one question. So this is gonna be a comprehensive study in terms of looking at all the crossings?
Yeah, but we're not gonna look at them all super equally. So the primary focus is gonna be in what we call the SCUR, the South County Urbanized Region, which is 3 cities plus Cottonwood. That's where all the people are at. But in terms of, we need to look at some of the other crossings further up the canyon and see if any of those are appropriate candidates for a sacrifice. There's so few of them, probably not, but it's worth looking into. And one of the things, you know, you don't know what you don't know. So we've recently found out that the spur that goes to Weaver Lumber that crosses East Side Road, that right of way for the spur is later than the establishment of East Side Road. So that gave the city of Reading a little bit of leverage in some recent negotiations. So that's kind of why we're looking at the whole region, but obviously our most intense interest are going to be the ones that are highly used and, you know, where the need is.
Okay. I have a few comments. Again, Sean Ankeny with Shasta County Public Works. Few things. Healthy Shasta might be another good group to engage for pedestrian and bike. Latona Road has significant truck traffic and is of interest to the county. And lastly, we have done a very cursory look at this, Michael, and feel there may be a couple that could be sacrificial in the far north, if it helps for something like a location like Latona.
I will be following up with you on that.
And that was,
Be a lamb somewhere in the mix.
We have a couple places where you have loop roads where if we sacrificed one, the folks still have access, the road just won't go all the way around.
Yeah, I saw there's like 2 crossings in Costella, which, you know.
That's the area we're looking in.
Yeah, but I think one of them may be private, so.
Not sure, it was a very cursory review. So.
Yeah.
and that was part of what I was wondering is if we already feel like we have a sense of which ones are problematic and which ones are, you know, potential ones we could sacrifice. Can we be a bit more focused and try to expedite this process, or do we feel like we need to be as broad in our initial kind of research on this?
John, do you have any thoughts on that?
So I'll just add that part of this, the discussion with the partners was what are our needs and how do we try to use the opportunities in addressing Union Pacific's requirements as well as the transportation needs that we have and safety. And so the goal here is to make sure we have a good inventory of all of the different crossings, who owns it, who was there first, who wasn't there. Even, for example, the one in Shasta Lake confirming that some of that is like paper data from like 100 years ago, is who owns the railroad versus who owns the actual bridge, and then the road, getting all that confirmed. So then we can be strategic in, as a region, whether it be for a project need for the county, whether it be a project need for this, any of the 3 cities, that then we compare what are the leverage points, and then whether or not there's a collaboration between facilities that we could have reductions on, even if in different jurisdiction, to benefit the region overall, or each jurisdiction. So we're looking at that. You know, we're not going to look at every one of them in high level, 30% design level detail, but the goal is like this plan is going to help us about an inventory. We figured, the partner said, hey, we're already doing a good portion of the SCUR area. Why not do the rest of the corridor? If we get an opportunity at one time, we get that database, and then we can use this to figure out strategic advantages as those transportation needs come up. And also it's allowing us to address the whole issue of, hey, we looked at and we worked as best we can, look at every alternative that their guidelines are insisting that we do as a region to benefit each of the county and the 3 cities in addressing that element. So then you have that element to, as you go look forward and you say, hey, we're now dealing with a safety issue or other improvements in this corridor 4 years from now or 8 years from now. We've done that study with the railroad crossing related to it. As we identified, we've addressed that. All right, let's talk Union Pacific. So it's kind of some short-term and probably then long-term strategies.
Okay.
It's really interesting because I'm sure some of you have heard the term, a patchwork quilt regulation, and this is the most patchwork I've ever seen on a quilt because, the states have the ability to regulate the highways approaching it, but because of federal preemption, they cannot do anything about the blocking. That was a recent court case in the past 20 years. And so the states were hoping to clarify who in the federal government was responsible for regulating that, and the court declined. So it's still kind of in a state of limbo as far as that goes. There has been a lot, I've been reviewing studies and whatnot for the grant application. There has been a lot of federal interest in this issue lately because, as we know, the freight trains are getting longer and longer. So,
okay, just a comment. When dealing with the Union Pacific, the only way you get their attention is when they have an interest in it. And they do have an interest in grade crossings, safety interest, and speed interest and safety. So in this process of negotiating Union Pacific, there is room to negotiate. And you're doing a freight plan. I mean, there's a lot of, you have a stronger position than you normally do. Usually you're dealing with the railroad, they refer you to Omaha, like you went down a cave. But they would have an interest in this. They have had interest in the past in the grade crossings down to 273 because they're dangerous to the railroad as well as the public. So this could be interesting.
Yeah, I
Mr. Kreis, did you have a comment?
Mr. Kinney was just kicking me under the table to get your attention, so I was just trying to get your attention.
Oh.
Good.
Matt Plum.
Yeah, the only reason I was bringing that up is because if this, if we finish this study in 2029, which is already, 3 years from now.
Yeah.
But we already know that there's a specific problem with, a crossing now. If we're not going to even get to a point of having identified potential projects until 2029, and then, there would be a whole process.
So you'd like to see a little more urgency?
Yeah, I guess if we know that there's problems that we don't need to discover through this process, is there a way to, try to push action forward on some of those earlier rather than, allowing a full process of 3 years to go by and then being like, okay, well, we knew that was a problem 3 years ago, but now we have the study.
Yeah.
And I get that it will give us both helpful data and potentially some leverage if we have a better understanding of the broad picture. But that was kind of just if there is an opportunity there, and there might not be, so.
I would say, I recommend one of the things is talk to your public works departments, talk with your staff there and where the priorities of projects are at and the issues that they have. Because they can continue to identify the fund sources that they have. And or formula funding that they receive to address different issues to move it ahead. Or to maybe partner with another entity that may have an interest in developing a certain area. From there, so what we're trying to pursue is the funds that we know are available to us to work with our partners and work with Caltrans. Totally understand urgency that there may be some areas that would probably have to be a whole separate side conversation to identify where we can try to help. Sometimes that might just be a letter of support in trying to find some other funds, but right now with the planning funds that we have, we've already prioritized a number of other activities. We do have some limitations, so until we get Christine, I know both the city and county, city of Reading specifically and county, we talked about a couple locations as priorities, but there's a lot of different timing questions on different developments and how they play out. And so this is just hoping to provide one opportunity for that, depending on timing, so.
Michael, I was going to offer a couple of inputs. One, in 1938, they rerouted the railroad through city of Shasta Lake. So the right of ways might have different requirements because they're a lot later.
Yeah, I identified that as possible.
You're in high school, right?
Not quite. My dad was thinking. And then the city of Shasta Lake, our industrial park, has an emergency exit route through the canal. And that is an at-grade crossing with a lock gate on both sides of it, but the train has to blow the whistle every time it goes through there. And we would more than be willing to give up an at-grade crossing if somebody would just build us another emergency exit, which would be cheaper probably. I mean, it's a good thing to bargain with. I think it's also important on this study that you even look at some of the utilities that go under the railroad. Like in the city of Shasta Lake, we have a water line that we need to replace, and it's almost impossible to bore underneath that to put in our new water line. So maybe you could expand it just a little bit to look at utilities that are going under the railroad. And then I've also noticed that there are quite a few other railroad crossings, like 3M just at Mountain Gate has like a little tiny underpass under the railroad that's like 10 feet wide and 10 feet high. So I imagine you're going to be picking all these up and look at what those might do in the future and if there's any bargaining chips that you can have.
Yep.
So anyway, I think the study is needed and I think it's good to get it done and it'd be a comprehensive look at everything along the railroad because as Mr. Kenny pointed out, they will negotiate, but we need to know what we have to give up and what we want to gain. So.
Is that a motion?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll second.
Okay.
Directing me to apply for the.
To apply for the grant as staff directed. All in favor?
Aye.
And that was my motion. And CalSTA
Y'all ready
second.
to close that one?
Yes, let him approve.
Gotta have the report.
Oh,
What if there
Oh,
was?
okay, I
voted aye.
oh, you voted aye.
I don't know.
Okay, anybody opposed? Anybody opposed?
You're low, you're slow. You and Kevin's like gymnast injury.
Okay.
Well, did you correct a little more to try, away from Gallagher?
Okay, Gallagher, we're looking for future motions for topics.
Yeah, I have a question though.
Yeah.
I do have one. So John Ando, when you brought up the biodiesel thing, I just want to make sure I understood this right. Because a lot of times we get a lot of stuff and then we all go back and try and like fact check some of it. Because we have to, well, I'll just say, speak for me. I have to take staff's input more on this board than most. But so John said he came from, was it Hawaii County? And then they had 20 of those biodiesels ones and it worked great.
Correct.
And then you said, look into it. And he said, that's a great idea. Why in the heck do we have to come up with that idea? He came from a county that had 20 of these and we're giving a recommendation. Is that something that we're going to follow up with? Or is, I mean, that to me felt
So
disturbing.
Greg was talking about,
So I
so that for a while there, people were getting the grease out of the grease traps, like
Yeah.
for the restaurants and stuff, and being able to convert that into a biodiesel. The buses that were running in Hawaii, I would assume, are using some sort of biodiesel, like based on corn or what.
Yes, so to elaborate on that, please, Kevin, there's multiple sources. We could write him a paper that Greg asked for the same thing as it relates to hydrogen.
Yeah.
The fuel sources make it specific and different and dependent upon what you do with the vehicles and how much retrofitting and or change to the injection systems it requires on a diesel to make them operate effectively in a system like what we have. If we just had a bunch of surplus military equipment, we could turn on a system and they're designed to be able to utilize waste oil as a fuel function because of the pressure. But to transition the clean operation buses that we have, I don't even have that list of equipment that would be needed to do something like that.
Hold on. Let me clarify on this. First of all, in Hawaii County, it was B20 biodiesel that we used, but we had a fleet of 50 diesel buses there. So basically we put the B20 biodiesel fuel on those 50 buses. In order to switch from clean diesel to biodiesel, you basically have to flush out the fuel system. Gillig has given instructions on how that could be done. I just need to research because we buy our fuel through cardlock system. So I need to talk to the fuel vendor that Raba uses to see is biodiesel available in this area that we can consider, and then go through the process of flushing our buses to start utilizing that fuel. It's a fairly easy process in the end.
Kevin, is your question because you prefer us to be?
Oh, no, not at all.
Diesel, or is your question, okay.
No, I just was,
What is the question?
well, no, I'm just curious to ask his point, because if there's something that, like, I would hope John is constantly vetting different ways to make it more efficient, cheaper, other alternatives, because that's been the direction of this board the last 3 years, has been to bring forward.
I think
And so,
I don't know
Well, I
if it's
don't-
cheaper, I just.
I don't
know
know.
who's responding to the, what is considered renewable.
Yeah.
Is
Oh, is the
considered-
biodiesel considered a
Oh,
renewable?
part 30%.
John,
For purposes of the state though, not is it, because that doesn't matter.
Yeah, that
The
doesn't matter.
state says matter.
I was just basically making the comment that it would be like if I was giving my accountant like a tax tip. It's like that, you know, he should be the expert in that and be constantly bringing stuff back to us. I was just curious if what you asked, if there was actually something there that we're not looking into. That's it.
Kevin, John instructed me.
And I could say that the reason why I haven't really
Okay.
looked into it is just because of the ICT rule that CARB has put upon us that we need to start transitioning to zero emission. And regardless of the diesel, whether it's clean, renewable, or bio, it's not going to be recognized by CARB into the future.
Doesn't fit. This is asked to what is this?
By the way, Greg, the van that ran on that diesel or that grease, exhaust tube smelled like French fries.
Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah.
No kidding.
You know, along that line, I just read a book on the invention of the diesel engine, a German guy, Mr. Diesel, named the diesel engine after himself, and the first diesel engines ran on peanut oil. So that was the way they actually fueled the diesel engine. So they can run on a lot of things. It's
Accidentally brought in my.
It's a multi-fuel engine, really, in a way. Okay, anybody else have any other future comments? Then we are adjourned and thank you, everybody, for coming.